In the Mirror short story by JameliaAlicia. Prologue. As Sara enters the clear, crystal mirror, the sea-blue sky above reflects through, showing itself as an illusion. Sara's dark brown eyes turn honey as she touches the mirror and says, "Reveal my true desire." The ground started to shake from its soil, and instantly she felt a push in her body. She was pushed into the mirror and never saw London again. Her long lashes fluttered against the cool breeze of the sky. She sees an oak tree full of forest leaves and sees an Arthurian sword placed in front of the tree. She looks down and realizes she is wearing a light pink kimono with plain black shoes that remind Sara of ballet flat shoes. Behind her, she sees a reflection in the water and realizes her dark brown curly hair is tied back in a bun with chopsticks behind it. Her olive skin stands out against the crowd of people who were approaching the tree. They were all wearing traditional Japanese clothing, and they came in variety of nationalities: white, black, and Asian. The group of people who were approaching were in the army, holding swords in their hands. Some were men and women of authority. This frightened Sara, but she concealed her fear and placed her sword in fighting stance. In response to the stance, the group of men and women smirked and said, "Lucky go lucky," another woman with a sword, who seems to be experienced. "By the way, what is your name?" Sara looked up and stared into the man's deep green eyes and dark hair. He smirked, and she replied, "My name is Sara, and you?" "Koki." "Nice to meet you." She lowered the sword at him, and Koki touched the sword with his sword and flipped it down to the ground. Sara looked astounded and did not respond. "Pick it up," said Sara. "No firing swords at us. We come in peace, no battle." Sara could tell this was modern-day Japan because everyone in this secluded forest spoke English and not their native tongue. This place must have been a diverse place of all nationalities. Koki wanted to challenge Sara to a duel, but Sara did not mind. She had a courageous and fearless heart despite fear. Koki and Sara started a conversation before a woman cut into the conversation and replied, "There has been ceasefire far east of Japan, and a boat is reporting to come in from another country." "Possibly merchants?" said Koki. "We need to find out who it is," said Sara. "You stay with the rest of the men and women. I go first." "No, let me. I love fighting. Anything to protect the nation," said Koki. "That's good. Let's get going," said Sara. Chapter 1. Sara and Koki were greeted by a couple of army men. Sara had her sword attached behind her, and Koki was walking behind her like a bear cornering its prey. Sara did not want to speak, but in this new world she knew she had to protect and be a warrior. This is what she desired to be, a warrior princess. In her instincts, she knew the skills and tactics of how to defend her country. In the previous world, she had no clue and was too busy working in her 9-to-5 jobs in accounting. Perhaps war was like problem solving, and she knew this is when her accounting skills came into play. In war, you had to be good at strategic planning and using conflict resolution methods. This was a game she was willing to play. She enjoyed the hell out of it. In this world, people did not like the word game and saw war as a way to solve a problem. Sara and Koki are walking up a steep hill in the hills of East Japan. The sea is merging with the white, cloudy sky, and they see a ship approaching the end of the sea. Koki and Sara did not respond, but stood next to the rest of the army on horses. In this world, you can control anything, and Sara was surprisingly good at horse riding. She looked down at the horse with a light smirk. "This is interesting. I cannot remember being good at horse riding in this world," said Sara. Koki looked across at Sara on his horse. He lightly smirked at her remark and looked ahead at the sea. The military behind Koki was wearing red and dark brown armor. They stood still as the wind, and nothing could blow them away from the powerful gust. Koki waited and analyzed the ship. He could see a man in the distance aiming for fire. Hold on, they are planning an attack on the east coast of Japan. Koki looked behind him and he directed his horse to move. He went towards the military, as Sara was still on her horse, guarding the territory and the military. She was not afraid and felt a powerful surging fury to fight back and was willing to not go down without a fight. This was win-win negotiation. She cared about both sides winning a war. Sara saw a vision of a blurry man wearing a long red cape. He whispers, "Let both sides win. It is destined." Sara hesitated and blinked. She had signed and looked behind her and saw Koki and the military preparing to fire at the ship across the sea. Koki shouted, "Aim swords!" Sara, in fashion, got her samurai sword from behind her and aimed at the sea. She was ready for war. However, her heart was fixed on the prophecy she claimed in her mind that must have been from the mirror she touched. But in this world, you can have any abilities and powers. She had the power of foresight. All she knew, she had to keep her mouth sealed. Do not tell the other party. This was sacred and personal. Sara could not speak, but she wanted to have a conversation with Koki about this. Right now, in this moment. This was war. Sara signaled the horse to react and started to gallop towards the edge of the shore. The military followed behind her. She screamed and channeled her fury of concealing a secret into fighting. Lethal and deadly is knowing what is going to happen in the future. Let both sides win. It is destined. She carried this in war and was not afraid to voice this to Koki. In this moment, Sara had an idea. The idea was to mislead the men on the ship. She raised a fist behind her and shouted, "Retreat to the woods!" The military nodded and followed Sara into the woods. This was going to be a game of survival. In the woods, they were met by a circle of military army. Sara and Koki were still on their horses. This was a trap for the other military across the sea. A waiting game. They waited until they heard a gallop of horses. All the military were ready with their swords. Sara was staring ahead firmly, and Koki was behind her with his horse. The gallop stopped, and Sara looked down and back up until she saw an arrow going in her direction. She jumped off her horse and backflipped into the air and landed with her sword in her hand. Koki watched her and decided to get off her horse. Both horses galloped away into the woods. This was a fight which will end with blood in her hands. All the military run towards the retreating army on their horses. Sara was conscious she did not have her horse as her backup, but she was skilled in the military now due to her new abilities in the new world. She remembered in the previous world being taught the military in history class in high school. However, the backflip was out of her equation. This reminded her of the karate films she used to watch as a child. She felt like she was in a movie, but she was controlling it. The ending will be unknown, and the prophecy she saw in her mind, she was not sure if it was true. Sara was faced with opposing military men from the north of Japan. Sara looked at the guards and quickly reacted to their movements with speed. The movements she made became a dance of battle and an echo of resistance. All the guards, one by one, was dead. Sara looked across and saw Koki being restrained by one of the military soldiers with an axe. Sara quickly runs towards him and went behind the soldier like a tiger watching its prey. She put the sword right through the soldier fiercely. No mercy. "Are you all right?" said Sara. "Without you, you saved my life," said Koki. "That's good. Let's go," said Sara. Both continued their fight in the woods with the military. Everything around them became a savage battle of fiery and a cry of strength. Koki army was powerful, and they had no fear showing that. Later that day, they were met in the room with military personnel from the other side soldiers. Koki and Sara were standing in front of the general that went by the name General Tiaga. "As you know, this war will not end if you comply." "What will happen if we do not comply?" said Sara. You will pay the price of your actions. The east of Japan will be ruled by the north. As you know, General, we do not comply." He hesitated and looked startled by the comment. Sara looked at him in silence and used this as a strategy to plan what to say. Koki smirked at Sara and looked back at Tiaga in this moment. Sara was a strong-willed woman who knew what she wanted. She wanted peace and unity between both sides of Japan, no violence and evil. She hated the usurper who ruled the north. The general wanted people to comply, and yet Sara will not leave until they bring peace into this world of violence. That's when she rebelled and decided that her fate lay in the hands of the world she is currently in. With that power, Sara decided to negotiate and end the wars in both of the lands. War disputed. It was over, and there was victory beneath the sun rising from the north sky, and the sound of drums and cheers was heard from the camps of eastern Japan. Sara and Koki stood in the center of the camp with their swords and raised them to the air as a sign of victory. A war has been won by both sides of Japan. In this world of dispute, without the help of Sara, the war would have failed. Sara's leadership definitely caused them, North Japan General, to negotiate, and without her, we would not know the fate of the lands, said Koki. All the soldiers raised their swords and made the noise of victory that can only be described as magical and complete peace. Maybe this was it, the end of all wars across lands and countries. Sara whistled, and that's when she decided to deliver a speech of victory. When she wandered back into the woods, she came across mirrors scattered across trees and bushes. When she walked past the mirror, she had a look of admiration at her form and the weapons she was holding in her hands. She did not recognize the girl she was seeing in front of her. Instead, she saw a note by one of the mirrors, and it said, "Come home." Sara hesitated and wondered who it could be from. They were only reflections, obedient, silent, honest. They showed you the truth, whether you liked it or not. Until the night hers rippled. The truth rippled, and that's when she saw the real world, the modern world she knows. Modern-day London. She debated between the worlds of her place and knew her heart was in the mountains and hills of Arthurian Japan. The other world was a ghost and shared no meaning. It felt flat now, like a photograph of something that had once mattered. She saw herself reflected in the window of a passing bus, small and swallowed by concrete. Then the image shifted. Cherry blossoms drifted across her reflection. Armor glinted in sunlight. A horizon breathed. Her heart did not hesitate. She had thought the modern world was solid and the other world a dream, but standing there between the two, she realized something deeper. One world held her body, the other held her becoming. London was noisy. Arthurian Japan meant... The other world was not unreal, it was unfinished, a ghost of who she had been before she understood that survival was not the same as belonging. She placed her hand against the mirror once more. "I know where I stand," she whispered. The mountains answered with wind, and London for the first time felt distant, not in miles, but in spirit. Perhaps all this fighting may have had significance to her and shared its power through the soul of her own. The glass cooled beneath her palm, and Sara dropped the glass and made the decision to stay in Japan and not leave. A sacred marriage with her warrior soul, and made odes to her future self in letters and ancient scriptures. To death, you will find me in the soles of each sword and in the beating of each sidewalk in the hills, stairs, and fountains. In the world I kept in my mind, I made the choice and decision to remain utterly devoted to myself. Without Koki, my heart would have shattered and not made back together again. I decided to remake my heart through the movements and sways of my sword and find my purpose through the meditations of wisdom.